Hey everybody, welcome to Marching Arts Education, this webinar about drill writing with drill writing guru, Joe Hull. Joe Hulls. Joe, how are you?
Fantastic.
Thank you for staying up late over there in the UK. I think it's so cool that there's technology in our world today. Still think it's very cool whenever I get to chat with you. So thanks for doing this late night.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Awesome. So everybody, if you have any questions as we're going, type those into the chat. I'll have that communication with you there. And I'll get out of the way. So Joe, I'll let you do your introduction, however you want to introduce it and get going.
All right, fantastic. So I think if you've been, subscribed to Marching Arts Education, you've probably seen some of the things, promos and stuff like that. Tonight is the first one of 4, and we're going to be covering pretty much from the very basic overview of the program and where you should be looking, what all the menus are about, what all the tools do, and kind of how to think about the tools and group them based off of the kind of drill that you'd like to write, and just kind of get a basic feel for how the program works and flows. Before we get going though, I want to see if you guys know how to do it. At the bottom there's a reactions button, and you can click on a reaction like a hand clap or a thumbs up if you are following along on Pyware with the file in the chat. Give me a thumbs up or a hand clap, just so I know that who is following along, or if you have Pyware open. So like you just click on the thumbs up in the reactions tab, that way I know. Or you can raise your hand if you want. All right, so I don't see a whole lot of people with the program open, which is fine. Or a thumbs down. Oh no, Patrick. Oh no. If you need to or you want to, I have a video on my YouTube channel, which talks about how to get the demo for Pyware. Now, right now is probably not the best time to do it because we've already gotten started. But if you see something or hear something tonight and you go, I really want to get this program and get started, the demo is a great way to do it. So head on over to my YouTube channel and kind of browse through my videos, and you'll see a how to get Pyware demo. This is a link to my channel, so it's in the chat. So if you're following along tonight, you're going to see some things that are a little bit different. I use a screen, an espresso display to write, and I use a pen, and that's just this year. I'm just getting kind of started with this, and so you'll see that there are some benefits to using this, and I've got my little glove here, and there's some setbacks. I think it's really good for some things, but you'll see me be challenged with it, I think, at times when I'm doing some forms or some things, because it's very, very sensitive. It's a lot more sensitive than my mouse. Great, we got some more people coming in. My man Phil. Phil's always around and watching my stuff. I love having him around. He's a big supporter of mine. Lee, welcome. We're just getting started. So if you didn't have the Pyware file, it's in the chat. Tim put it up there. And then I also have a link to my YouTube if you guys want to subscribe to that. That would be awesome. But let's get started. I'm going to, we got Sal jumping in. Fantastic. I'm going to go to a share screen mode so you can start seeing my screen. And then I'm going to tip my camera down a little bit and go ahead and pin my video. Hopefully that makes it look like you can just see me up there. And then let's get this going here. Zoom in. All right. Make sure we're in focus. And let's get going. So if you have that file pulled up, I'll make it a little bit darker so you can see my screen. It should look something like this. I also got to make sure that I turn my chat on so I can see what's going on. Great. And if you're just jumping in, Tim's got some info there in the chat for you just about how to ask questions. So just pop them in the chat. And if it's something we want to kind of get off on a tangent and kind of work on and chase up, he'll mention it to me and we can jump in. All right. So here, if you have the file and you have Pyware open, on page 1, this thing needs to go away. Can't even get to my my taskbar needs to go away. There we go. All right. So on page 1, it says, welcome to Pyware Live. You should see, hopefully, if everything comes up in the right spot, a couple of things here. At the bottom, you see 3 page tabs, 1, 2, and 3. If you want to click on 2, I've got some info there for you. So the program is laid out in a way where you have your tools kind of in the upper left-hand corner. We call that the toolbar. And there's a lot of different tools. We're going to go through most all of them tonight. You've got this box over here called the stride indicator. And you may need to click on this little tab here at the top. There's 3 tabs. They kind of all do different things, but the top one is the one you're looking for. You've got this window here, the Pyware Real View window, and you can open it and close it by double tapping at the top, and it'll open and close. You can resize it, of course, to show the field a bit bigger if you want to do that. Anytime you double tap the top, it should close. You've got a very important section at the very bottom of the program. A lot takes place down here. And the biggest one being this count track. So your counts are here. Like this page tab 2 is 8 counts into this drill, technically. You've got your yellow and red anchors. The yellow anchor is where your members or the people, the performers that we're going to create are. And the red anchor is where they're going to be going to. We're going to add them in a little bit. And then you've got your animation controls where you press play. You can watch the drill animate in real time, and you can turn the music on and off and that sort of thing. So there's a couple other options down there. Okay, so it's just a brief overview. And then, of course, you've got the grid. So depending on what activity you're writing for, whether it be high school marching band, which it kind of, mine anyway, comes loaded as the default. If you want to do college, you should go into the grid editor and select the college hashes. We'll jump into that a little bit in session 2. Or if you're doing indoor guard or drumline winds, we can talk about how to do that as well. There are also several videos on my YouTube channel about how to set up your Pyware to write for those specific activities. Also, yes, Texas high schools use hash marks, college hash marks. So it's important to ask your clients those things. Moving on to page tab 3, there's a couple more important items and some things that you should know about. I'm going to put this back in the corner because that's where it should be. I'm going to move my stride indicator down just a little bit because there are a couple other really important things. The first one being the production sheet, which is just over here on the side. And the production sheet is a very important place to add all your information for every page. The measures, the title, you want to add any notes, anything that need to be done. You can open that and close that by clicking this pin at the top, and it'll go away. You can kind of double tap on that or tap on it, and it'll come back out. You've got a direction arrow because in Pyware, you can write down here at the bottom, you can write drill forwards or you can write backwards by clicking that arrow, and it turns the timeline, the count track, red. If you minimize your real view by double tapping the top, like I told you before, it goes away, and you can see that there's a couple more important things. To add any page tabs, at the bottom here, the very bottom right of your screen, you will unclick the lock, and you can add page tabs to your count track. So we'll lock that back up real quick. There's two more things that I think are really important to know before we get into actually creating some performers and writing some drill. Obviously, there's all these menus up here along the top. A lot of those things, a lot of those menus have pretty, they're kind of just another way of reorganizing what's also out here on the toolbar and some of the other things we're going to work on. But the other two things that are really important when you get to actually writing is the step resolution over here in the top right corner. Because when you write drill, you want to make sure that you are putting performers on the grid, or that you're making your forms go within the boundaries of the field to help the performers learn it quickly. So it's important to select your resolution as you're writing. And I'll show you more about that once we get into some of the tools. You can see how that benefits to be at a lower resolution or a smaller resolution, 1/8 of a step or a quarter step. But a lot of times mine lives in either 1 step or half step resolution. And the other one is the grid positioner. It's this top right corner. It's the one next to the A looking one. That's a sketch one. It's this one. It's the grid, but it positions the grid and helps you move it around. And if you have a mouse with a scroll wheel on it, you can actually scroll up and down. And on mine anyway, it zooms in and out. I think if yours doesn't, you have to hold Control or Alt and click, and it kind of goes back and forth. It's important that if you're only working on a very small part of the field, that you don't need to have the whole field showing. You can actually zoom in on the part that you're working on, like the front sideline. We're going to do that in just a second. And you can just focus on that bit of field. I find for me that it just really helps. Now, when you look in the the real view, you see I've already added some props at the back. That's what those 3 X's are on the top. I use my grid positioner, you can see those. And then I also created a big curtain, so it kind of looks like Indy there, which is quite nice. And we also are using the Indy stadium as our backdrop. Okay, we can talk a little bit more about how to dress up your files in the second and third sessions. But for right now, let's get back to the important stuff, and that is these tools, and write a little bit of drill. Now, whenever you use the grid positioner, you've got to go back and turn it off so that you can get back to your menus and that type of thing. Now, in this bottom right-hand text box, it says click the little lock in the bottom right-hand corner, follow along, and add 5 16 count page tabs. So we're going to click on that lock, and we're going to add 5 16 count page tabs. So that would be 16 counts from here. So we add one here at 32, because these are in groups of 8. And you can see it says range 16. So that page tab is 16 counts away. We're going to add a few more, 3, 4, and 5. And there you have it. Okay. These 5 page tabs are what we're going to use to learn our tools. All right, so let's click on our newly added page tab 4. I'm going to talk first about creation tools. Okay, there are, in my mind, 2 kinds of tools in Pyware: creation tools for creating new forms, and then transition tools. Okay, and transition tools are for shapes that you don't want the shape to change, you just want it to move, or if you want a non-straight pathway type movement. So I'll show you the difference between those 2 tools. Pretty much every tool falls into those 2 categories. There are a couple other important tools that don't really fall into that category, and we're going to go over those at the end. Okay. All right. So let's go back to page tab 4, creation tools. I'm going to move this up here just a little bit, and we'll open that as we go. The first thing we need to do, actually, I'm sorry, we don't have any performers yet. Let's go back to page tab 1. And you'll notice on the grid, I've added two little boxes here. I've got a box on the 35 this side and a box on the 35 this side. We're going to use the line tool to create some performers. Now, you don't always have to create performers at count 0. Technically, you can make them anywhere. If you drag your anchors and put them together, then you're allowed to add performers. And then you can work backwards from there. But technically, the best place to do it is right at the very beginning. So let's do this. Let's grab our line tool. It's up here and it says line drawing tool. You click on that and your control panel shows up, and it just kind of shows you a lot of info here. Now, every tool we're going to work on tonight will show you a lot of info and options that you can do. We're going to go with pretty much just the defaults here tonight. I'm going to click on this box here on the 35 and then over to here on the 35. Now that creates 25 positions at a 2-step interval. Okay, and we're going to make just leave our symbols an X in blue. Now you could click on all this, you could make it different symbols. If you made them an F, they would become flutes. There's all these different little rules in Pyware, and there's a guide that's included in your program for which symbols will create the instruments. Now, I tend to use either an X or a small s, and the small s actually makes them snare drummers. But you can change any performer to play any instrument in the real view as long as you do it after you've set your symbols. Okay, if you want to go through and make them flute players, but then you go back and change their symbol to a T, they're going to be made into trumpet players. So it's really important for you to set your symbols first. Okay, anyway, we're going to keep it an X. Now we've got 25 X's on the field, and if we open up our real view, we should have 25 standard performers with no instruments in their hands. Now, you can go a lot of different ways with this to get them, like I said, to be the instruments you want. If you do like to have your performers to have like the letter F as their symbol, you can do that. You just have to click here on this label L tool, and you can make them an F and then hit repeat symbols. And then all of a sudden they become Fs. And then you'll notice they are flute players. Okay, so that's a way to do it. I like to make mine, like I said earlier, I just like to make them all lowercase s's, because lowercase s is a dot. And I think that that looks really good on the grid. But yes, it does change them all to snare drummers. But like I said, once you've set your symbol, you can make them whatever you want. So I'm going to keep them that dot, but I'm going to go ahead and select them again. And I'll go to this red flag here. This is called the Visuals Editing tool. The Visuals Editing tool allows you to change. If you go to the very first tab, Uniform and Equipment, and then right down here is all of your performers. I'm going to make them trumpet players. Brass, trumpet, apply changes. So now they're trumpet players, but they have the symbol of an S, which is a dot on the field. Now that to me looks very, very clean. I like having the dots on the field. I see a lot of people that do X's, or they'll do F for flute, C for clarinet, A for alto, and then they'll add a number underneath it. And that's a good way to do it too. Coming up with your formatting is important. Also, chatting with your client, if you're writing drill for a client, and asking what they want is also really important too, because they might come back and say, well, I like it where everyone's a dot. And then you write A1, A2, A3 underneath it, for example. So I can just go to label, make these T1, and then hit plus. Now all of a sudden they're all T1 through T25, except. Didn't change anything with the real view, but we've got T1 through 25. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. Let's get to making some drill forms, because there's a whole lot to do here in this RealView a visuals editor. And we're going to spend some time, like I said, in number 2 and number 3, when we get to writing some drill to some music, working with those and changing the fabric, that sort of thing. So we could kind of do a whole webinar probably just on this tool alone. The visuals editor is pretty big. All right, so now we've got 25 performers. If yours isn't labeled like mine, that's okay. If yours is all X's at a 2-step interval, that's fine too. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to learn about some of these tools. So the first set of tools we're going to look at are the creation tools. Now, we've already used a creation tool. We used the line tool, and that created a line. It didn't create a transition. The people haven't moved yet. They're just in a form. Okay, the first one we're going to cover is the point scatter tool. Now, whenever you want to move someone from the yellow anchor to the red anchor, you've got to select who you want to move. You've got some selection tools here. The arrow, of course, selects anybody who's glued together. These are glued together from left to right, green to red, as it shows. You can use this lasso tool here and select just 1 or 2 or 3. Or they've got a couple others. They've got this box where it'll only select what you put the box over top of. And if you hold Control, you can add more to it. Oh, sorry, Shift. Okay, but we can just go ahead with the normal arrow. Okay, so we're going to select all 25 of our performers. And we're going to move them 16 counts from page 3 to page 4. And we're going to use the first creation tool that I was talking about, and that's the point scatter tool. Okay, and that's this little dot right here. So when you use the point scatter tool, it's a very straightforward tool to use. Wherever you click, that is where a performer will go. Okay, now before I do this, I'm going to make sure I have a 1-step resolution, because I want all my players to be on the grid. And I'm also going to go to my grid positioner, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit, because I don't need to see all of this field out here. And because I'm using this pen, it really helps me to be zoomed in just a little bit. All right, so now wherever I put my pen, the performers are going to start moving from here, the left to the right. So you'll notice right away, T1 is already going to that spot. Now you can't usually click right on the person. You usually have to go off and then drag them on. It's just kind of a funny thing. And I like the point scatter tool. I think it's a good tool. Sometimes it saves me time when I'm going from any kind of linear form to a block form, because I end up putting them in the right spot, number 1. And then number 2, I also am creating or moving the right groups of people all in one step, as opposed to doing the block tool, then clearing it and picking who goes where. I tend to use the dot tool a lot. Some may say it's a little bit inefficient, but I don't. I think it's good sometimes. All right, so I've created a form with all 25 trumpets now. Most important thing to do is accept it. Anytime you get done doing creating a form, you have to accept it. And now we have a transition. So we have a transition from page 3 to page 4 that looks like that, where they kind of gate open into a block. Okay, looks nice. Zoomed in. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. You can hit play. You can watch it move. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Turn this off. There we go. Hit play, and you can see them gate and open. Okay, it's a good transition. Now, in Pyware, if ever you don't like your transition and you want to go back and change it and fix it, select all your people again, and then you go edit, delete, and then delete transition. And we're back to square one now. Okay, so a lot of people have that hotkeyed on their computer to something. They hit Control D or something, and it just deletes the transition. So it's a good way to do it where you're tending to delete transitions quite a bit as you're writing. So it's something that you want to look into if you want to have a solid workflow. All right. The next one we're going to do, of course, is the tool we're going to do is the line tool. Now we've already used that. So we're going to select all 25 trumpets, but lines don't always have to be straight across the field. They can be at diagonals. Now notice I am always designing from left to right because I started and I created my trumpets from left to right. If I didn't, and I did this pen tool the other way, we would get them all mixed up. I went from right to left. Now you can see the way that they were glued before from left to right, they're trying to go all the way over, but you can fix this fairly simply. Over here where it says matching lines in the line tool control panel, you just hit flip and it'll flip their pathways. Okay, now if you wanted a totally different pathway or a totally different order, you could clear it out and you could tell, we want every other person to go. And then you just click on the ones you want to go. So that would be another way to do it. I'll show you a little bit more about that when we get to the circle tool, because I'm going to unmesh the line. All right. So that's the line tool. Of course, if you like where you put them, you go ahead and accept. And now you have a transition from 3 to 4 where the line kind of rotates there in place. All right. The guy on the 50 doesn't know what to do, so he just marches to the left a little bit. Fantastic. Next tool. Let me go up here and just see if I can get my text box. All right. Delete that, delete transition. We're hopping to the next tool, which is the arc tool. Okay, I'm going to select all 25 performers. This arc tool looks like just a nice, perfect arc over here. It works this way where you click on the ends and then you select the depth with a third click. So I put on the 40s, and then you can kind of move and control the handles that they call them handles. It's the little red squares that are on there. And you can select where they're going, who goes where. If you're creating again from left to right, the pathways are probably going to be correct. If you didn't, you could flip it or clear it if you needed to do that. And then of course, when you're ready, you hit accept. And then of course you have a nice arc now. Oh, I need to use my mouse when I do that. Kind of goes crazy. Play. Bending into the arc. Looks great. Okay. Two more tools here, or yeah, two more tools on the creation tools. These are kind of the big 5 or the big 4. I use these quite a bit. I'm going to select my people again, and we're going to make a curve. Now the curve is more of a squiggly line tool. It's up here underneath the arc, and wherever you click, it will create a curved form between those clicks. So I go here, here, and here, and it will start to do that. And I'll come back around here, here, and there. And then you can kind of go through, and this is where the having a lower resolution will help you to kind of smooth these forms. The lower resolution tends to do that. It gives you kind of a fine tune, whereas the one-step resolution, I find, doesn't give you as much control over how it looks. And again, because I'm designing from left to right, I can create that curve and it will probably do the pathways correctly. Now, if you don't like a 3.69 interval, you can click up here in the control panel for the curve, and you can say, look, I just want this to be a 3-step interval, and put a 3 in there, and it locks it in. And so now you'll see what that curve looks like with a perfect 3-step interval. If you like it, accept it. And now you've got a line to a curve. Okay, and all of those are straight path motions. And I'm not designing where I'm kind of running away with it, where I'm having them do really big step size. So you haven't seen anything flash in here in the stride indicator. If I was, it would flash a little bit, or there'd be red numbers saying I'm trying to make the people march too much further than they are. You can see it flashing now if I kind of go overboard with it. 4.4 to 5. So keeping an eye on this stride indicator is really important. You can see, that the kids are being stretched probably further than you want them to go. Okay. So keep an eye on that stride indicator. It's important. All right, now we're going to get to this last tool for creating new forms in the first 5, I should say here. And this is where we're going to cover something that's really important. Okay. I mentioned earlier about gluing and pasting. So there's a little tool over here that looks like a glue bottle. And then there's also a knife tool for cutting. And this allows you to group your performers differently. So you can flip their grouping order. So now we can design from right to left, or you can regroup them all completely, or you can apply a pattern. So a pattern A-B. So that's a good pattern if you like to do moves that kind of mesh or unmesh, and you hit yes. And now all of a sudden they're grouped in a way where every other person is their own line. I don't know if you can quite see that. I'll move it up. But by just doing that, we created 2 groups. So the A's were grouped together and the B's are grouped together. So it's important as you're designing to keep your performers grouped properly. Okay. Now there's another thing on there that works well. Another little option. If you select everybody and you liked how they were grouped on the previous page, you can go to this little guy, group like secondary count. And all of a sudden they're back to being grouped left to right. And they are, it was just a 1-click thing, which is awesome. I'll also show you a little thing. If you have a pen or even with a mouse, it works pretty well. If you want to group them yourself, you don't have to click on everybody. You can actually just drag over along and it connects them. So that's kind of a cool way to do it too. So keeping your performers grouped together properly, it really saves you some time. All right, last creation tool here, circle. And a circle works this way, where you will click on the center point of the circle and then you select its depth. So there's the center. I'm going to go back to a 1-step interval. Sorry, I was on a 8th step. And then we'll select the depth. Now it's telling me this end guy's got to go 4.4 to 5. Don't necessarily want that. I don't want this pathing either. I want it to separate. I want it to unmesh, if you will. So I'm going to hit clear. And I'm going to put this trumpet, this middle trumpet, to go straight back. And then I'm going to go every other one to the end. Now, I know how to do this because I've done it several times in my writing career. But you may be saying, that's, pretty advanced for me. Just think about how you want the form to open up. And if you don't like it, how it works, then I'll show you how you can quickly change it without having to redo all this. So let's say I messed up and I didn't get what I liked, or I thought, oh, this would look good, and then it just didn't. So I'll do that. So here's what I chose. I thought, oh, this would look great. And so, yeah, that's fine. And I thought this would look great. And I hit play. It doesn't look very good. Man, I really messed that up. That's not looking nice. So you don't necessarily have to go back and recreate this circle every time. I'll show you a little shortcut. you can just hit, if you like the placement of it, but you just want to mess with the paths again, hit Control-C to copy it and Control-V to paste it, just like you would in Microsoft Word or Google Docs. Control-C, Control-V. And then you hit Clear and try again. And you didn't have to mess with clicking on the circle tool again or deleting the transition, creating it all again. Just Control-C, Control-V, hit Clear, and try again. So this was the transition I wanted to do from the first place. Go every other person, out to the side, come back to the middle. And you may find that you have to play with it. You like the form, but you don't like how the performers are getting there. Well, let's copy and paste it again and try to get the paths right. Paste. Now let's see if it looks good. Let's see if it opens properly. Anytime I touch that real view with my pen, it blows up. Yeah, so you can see it opens up nicely now and has a very good look to it. Fantastic. So that's just kind of the bigger picture ones. The bigger picture tools for creation. All right. There are several more on the creation tool. If you want to go ahead and click on page tab number 5, there's a couple other ones. We've got the block tool. And the block tool is handy, but takes a bit more to think through sometimes. As a drill designer, you need to make sure that you are, you know how many people you have in the section that you're moving. Like right now, I know I have 25. So I know that I'm not going to pick a 4x4 block or I'm going to go rows of 5. 5 is my number because it's a 25. So thinking a lot in 5s or 3s and 2s to make 5, that sort of thing. But I'll show you what I mean. When you get into using the block tool, you select your performers, of course. Your block tool is up here, and it looks like 9 dots with some red ones, and you end up clicking it, and then you have to click on the corners of the block. So we're going to put, my hand tapped the screen. Sometimes this glove still taps the screen. So I know that I'm looking for 5s. So let's go here, 40, 40, and then you create the bottom left corner. So top left, top right, bottom left. Now look, it creates a whole lot more performers than we need. So I'm going to give it my intervals first and see what it does. I need 25 dots. So I made my rows at an 8-step interval. So we did an 8x8. And I still don't have enough dots here. I need to widen this. You notice you just kind of have to play with it just a little bit to get the amount of positions that you want on the field. But my pathways are all messed up. So where am I going to go from here? Let's clear it out and let's make my pathways correct. All right. Tim, if you think there's any other thing I need to explain further, what was that?
I actually didn't understand Phil's comment, and I didn't make myself clear. I was asking him to explain what he meant.
Yeah.
And that was sort of off the record while you were working. So I didn't mean
Oh,
to
that's
interrupt.
all good. I think what Phil's saying is that you can delete more than one page. So if you delete transition from 5 to 4, you can drag this all the way back to 3, and you can delete everything between 3 and 5. So deleting transitions doesn't have to just be one page at a time. So I think that's
Cool,
what
thank
he
you.
was throwing in there. Oh man, I got rid of my block. Okay. I gotta make that whole thing again. It's all good. I'll do it quick.
Well,
So block
this system
tool.
you're doing right now, Joe, seems a lot more frustrating and complicated than the first one you showed with the point and scatter thing.
Yeah, that's why I tend to use the I tend to use the point scatter tool when I create blocks. I mean, unless it's the very first set of a show, I usually use the point scatter tool, especially coming out of a line or coming out of a curve or an arc. I just find that it helps me get my path right the first time and the form, correct as well. So the block tool I use very sparingly, pretty much only if I'm creating a first set, I'll do it. So I'm just making sure that these pathways look good. I'm opening it up from the back to the front, but I'll show you, if you don't want to do that, a way to do it another way. Let's do this. So I'm just trying to visualize how it's all going to look as I go. Let's see what this one looks like. So now, let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah. So that would look good if you wanted to open up to that block and you got kind of that mesh on the 50, which looks kind of nice. But again, if you saw how long it took me to create that 5x5 block, when I did it with the point scatter tool, I was probably shorter doing it using that one. So coming up with your workflow, whether you like working with that block tool or not, is something that you can choose for yourself. Yeah, and you can like Phil said in the comments, you can play it even halfway through, selecting where people are going to go, and it will show where they're going to go, and you can modify it. Now, the next tool is an interesting tool, and I use it quite a bit, but I use it for, oh, actually, I was going to show you something else real quick, wasn't I? Let's do this. Let's go back. Also, another way to do Control-Z, and that kind of backs things up a little bit. So that block came back. If you wanted to create this same block, and we'll do what I did earlier, I selected everyone, Control-C, Control-V. Now I don't have to create the block again. I just can choose where the paths go. Clear. If I don't want to choose or start selecting where people are going from this way, I just use the arrow key, arrow to the right, and I can start from the top or the any place really on the form. So if I wanted to start in the bottom right corner selecting pathways, I could do that. And then you hit the left arrow and it takes you back. And now I get to create the pathways based off of the front right person. And sometimes that really helps, especially when you get into a situation where the form that you created is kind of fancy. Like, it took us a little while to create this block, so you want to make sure that you can just copy and paste it, and you're not worried about having to create it again every time you want to do these paths. So that's another way. It's just another way to do it. Okay, you can use those arrow keys and move it around, and you can start to fill in your pathways a different way. Let's take it back. The next one is called the filled shape tool. Now, because I'm doing so much changing to my form, you can see that all my gluing and pasting is getting messed up. Again, you click on that glue tool, group like secondary count, and it comes right back. And if it doesn't, regroup all, and then you just go ahead and draw around that circle. You don't have to tap every one of them. You just draw it and you're good. So now my circle is back to being glued back correctly. Now, this filled shape form tool is a tricky one. I find that it works well sometimes. Sometimes it has a rough time giving you what you want. So you have to really play with it. say I wanted these guys to go to maybe a wedge, something like that. You've got to kind of put your intervals. I'm going to go 4s, horizontal interval, vertical interval. And see, I've got 25 members, so I'm going to try to drag these out and make it just a little bit bigger to get all 25 people in. And it may do things like it as you pull it around, it kind of finds a way to do it. Maybe right now I've got 25. You can stagger it. You can window it. We'll do the window. Why not? And then, of course, you clear it out, and then you can pick your paths. So it's a good tool for creating shapes that you may not have thought of ahead of time, where you say, well, I want a wedge, but I'll play with it, and it allows you to kind of play with it. But I find, again, if I'm going into anything that's on the grid, I usually use that the point scatter tool, just because I know exactly how it's going to fold in and who's going to go where. So here you would obviously select, again, your the performers and where you'd like them to go. Now, I will show you another thing that this tool does, and it does a pretty good job of this, and I've used it a handful of times. Sometimes in marching band, I know you can't believe this, we do what's called a scatter drill or a scatter set. So if you wanted to do a scatter set, it does a little thing here where you can create the amount of space that you want. So say I wanted everyone to scatter to this area here. This is about as far as I want everyone to go. They shouldn't be going any further than that. You can put in 25. We got 25 positions. Let's put them all at a 12-step interval. And you can say scatter places, and it will pick random places for them to go. So it is kind of a way to do that. You can hit randomize, distancing. There it is, distancing, 12 steps, or you can make it less, so 6 steps. That's a little bit more, a little bit better in terms of being, controlled scatter, if you will. And then, of course, clear it out, and then you can pick who goes where. So that's a way to create a scatter set quickly and a little bit more random, as opposed to you just kind of point scatter tool and then really fine tuning it. I'll just hit proximity match, because that will kind of put the closest people to the closest dots. Accept. And now you've got a scatter set. But look, I didn't get these last 5 people in there. So again, it's one of those tools that you got to play with. It's not one that's going to get it right the first time. You probably need to punch some more numbers into it. I would probably say I use the block tool and the filled shape tool maybe once or twice in a drill, maybe. It just depends on what we're doing. Now, you can see it messed up my glue and paste like crazy. So I'm going to hit my glue button, group like secondary count, and accept. And we're back to where we were before. Okay, so we got a line to the circle. The last 2 tools we're going to use are the polygon tool. Freeform tool. Sorry, we got 3 more. Where are we at on time? Just making sure I'm good. Okay. Wow. All right. Fantastic. Still lots to do. I'm going to start speeding it up just a tiny bit, because a lot of what I'm saying is a little bit of the same thing. So the freeform tool looks like this pen and allows you to draw with your mouse, and it will create all the handles. And it's really nice with this pen tool because it's really kind of intuitive. With the mouse, I didn't find it was so much. But then you hit smooth, and it kind of smooths it out just a little bit. If you notice, it kind of reins it in. And then you can delete half the handles if you want, and that will help you to fine tune what you use for that. Now, I use the freeform tool for any time that I'm making if I want to make a frame around something. So if I wanted to have everybody open up and go to a frame, I can tell it the interval. Everyone needs to be on the grid. 4 steps. It's not going to create any curves. Notice it creates straight lines to everything. And now I know that I've got a frame that's at that 4-step interval all the way around. So I like to use the pen tool for that. I'll use it to create forms with this pen, or I'll use it to create frames, and I can set the interval. I feel like it's a nice tool for creating forms that are connected but aren't curved. They're perfectly straight every time. All right, I'm going to do the spiral tool next. Spiral tool is very much like the circle tool, and you may not have the spiral tool. I think some people have to pay for that extra. But you essentially just select the center of the spiral and then move it, select the depth. And then, of course, you would clear it out and select who goes where. And then there's some other options up here with interval and that sort of thing. There's other things like clone. If you were creating a form on this side of the field with these performers over here, and you wanted it to show up on the other side of the field, kind of mirrored at the 50, you can clone it once, and then it'll be cloned a perfect symmetrical form on the other side of the field, reflective. So there's a couple other little things that you can play with there, which is kind of cool. But a lot of times when you're designing drill, you're probably going to be dealing with groups of instruments in different places, and it's probably easier just to create things as you go. I don't use the clone tool a whole lot. All right, and then finally, the polygon tool. And you may not have this one either. It may be one of those that is an add-on. Now, because we're at 5, so we have 25 members, we should have good corners on this. Sometimes when you have even numbers, the polygon tool doesn't tend to work as well. Got to have an odd number. Okay, and of course, it creates a polygon, a five-sided shape. And because my guys were all glued correctly, it looks lovely. All right. So that is kind of the end of the creation tools. So when you want to create a new shape, when we want that shape to be a new form, the next bit we're going to talk about is transition tools for no change of shape. We want the shape to stay the same, or if there's a non-straight pathway. So transition tools are like this first one, the push tool. And the push tool is this bunch of arrows over here. And you click on that after you select your performers, and you can move your performers by just grabbing one and moving it. So notice the shape of the polygon didn't move at all. It just, everyone moved in unison. Or you can use your arrow keys, down, 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 left, 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 up, 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 right, 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 right. So you can use your arrow keys to move people down. It's good when you want to do a float move. There's a rotate button where you select your performers. You click on this circle with an arrow, and you can rotate. So we'll put this guy as the point. 4.2 to 5. Oh, that's too big. Now, I will show you one thing. When you do the rotate tool, is it will animate it with a curved path. So if I click on my pathways, it's up here. It's this little tool at the top. It shows you the curved path. Now, that was really funny because it actually took it all the way from that previous version. I should do it that way. Here we go. I'll turn the paths off. Delete, bringing it back. Let's put this up a little bit higher away from the front sideline. There we go. All right. So if we're going to do the rotate tool, we will rotate, and it creates a circular path, like I said. Okay, so you notice when you watch it animate, the performers take a rotated path, and the interval stays the same the whole time. Now, if you like that, that's cool. You just need to make sure to show people on your drill chart, show your client how to march it by giving them some arrows. Like you can select everyone, you can click on the arrow key, and where's my arrow? There it is. And then you can say, create arrows from paths. Yes. Whoa, look at all that. And it shows everyone's paths on the page. So take a perfectly round path. Let's get rid of some of those. And then if you want it to be a straight path, like you want to see the form breathe, shrink and then open again, just click on the push tool, and the push tool pretty much makes any transition go from being curved back to being straight. And then you just accept it in the position it's at. Now that will look just a little bit different. You'll see it shrink and then it'll open up. So the intervals get a little bit smaller, and then you'll see the form breathe a little bit at the end. So it's just a way of doing it where you can have a curved path or you can show a straight path. It's really up to you. Now, let's do one more. There's one more kind of big transition tool, and it's one that everybody loves, the follow the leader tool. And the follow the leader tool is right here, has a kind of a squiggly line with a red dot at the end. And it shows you the leader. And if you don't like that leader, you can click on it and it'll go to the end of the line. So in this case, there's the end of the line. If you don't like that, then you've got to make sure you go back and glue everyone together properly. So you'd get out of the thing and you get out of that tool. You'd select everybody, glue, and then you'd glue it in the way that you want them to follow. So right now, the green guy at the end of the form is the leader. Okay, so we're going to keep him as the leader. That's fine. Okay, I'm going to select a lower resolution. I'm going to put this guy, let's say it's a 16 count move. So 4, 8, 12, 16. We'll put it right on that dot. And that should put the corners stay as set. And it's going to be good, I think. And now this will keep the form. It'll be the same shape, but they follow the leader around it. And they'll hit the corner every 4 counts. Now, if you didn't want to hit the corner every 4 counts, you could do that, but it may mess the form up. It may not look as good. So when you use the follow the leader tool, it's good to do a little bit of math to just make sure that you're all set. Okay. A couple other tools and transition tools. Again, we're not going to change necessarily the shape. We're just changing kind of the characteristics of it. So the resize tool is a very important tool, and it has 4 major things that you can do. Okay, when they come up, it says scale. Scale will make it bigger or smaller from the center. So you can shrink it, you can expand it from the center. Stretch will allow you to open it up just right and left, or up and down. I use stretch quite a bit. It's a good tool. Slant is a good one, and I'll show you that in a second because that's a really good one for kind of using the block tool. And then distort. Distort would be where you can just edit one handle, and it just literally just distorts the form a bit. So let me show you this super quick. Let's just go ahead and pop everybody in a block. So I want to show you this slant tool. And that's fine. It doesn't need to look super pretty. So now if you had a block and you selected your resize tool, slant is a great way to find cover downs and that kind of velocity of interval, what's available. So you can just move, one window, which would be putting everybody, in a window here. You can go to the next cover. You could go even further to the next window. if you have enough counts. Now, if you make a form that you like, but you're obviously seeing these guys down here aren't moving, just arrow key to the left or right, and you can actually kill two birds with one stone. You can push tool while using the resize tool. So it's pretty nice, and you can float it forward as well. And then that can help you find those times where you want to have that cool cover down moment, where things are gating and moving and rotating. So the slant tool as part of the resize tool, I think is a really cool one. Also, distort can be kind of fun too, but a lot of times, it creates some pretty funky things. Let's go. The next ones are pretty simple. The track tool is when you want to create a transition, because again, we're doing transition tools, where within one page, they do two different directions or more. So it's this little line with a squiggle. And if we wanted these guys to go backwards 8 and then to the right 8, we don't have to do two separate pages. You just literally go backwards 8 steps. There would always be a plus sign that show you who you're working with, and then over. So now with that transition, the marchers go backwards, halfway through, they go over. And then in your notes, of course, you write, the block, the trumpet block should march backwards 8 to the right 8, or towards side 1. So the track tool can kind of do two different transitions in one. The next one is the stagger tool. Now the stagger tool has a little bit to it here, but will allow you to create a transition in which people step off at different times. Now, I'm going to do this where the thing you got to do with stagger tool is you need to create where they're going first, then add the stagger tool to it. So in this case, I'm going to use my resize tool. Let's just have fun with this. Let's see. I'm going to use scale. Let's shrink it down and accept. So I've created the page. Now I'm going to use my stagger tool. Stagger tool is right here. It's this kind of peel apart shape. Now it's showing you who the leader is, but that's important. We're going to use groups of 5. So because I'm going to do a group of 5, so I want every line to step off at a different time. They can step off every 2. So every 2 counts, a line will move. 1, 2, next line, next line, next line, next line. I want them to do it in 8 counts because it's not very long steps. Okay, I'm going to hit accept. Now it should be where the back line moves and the next line up. So you can play along with creating forms using that stagger tool to create the kind of transition you're looking for, especially if it's layered. And using groupings is really important too. Saves you a lot of time, and then you don't have to go back and go every 2 counts, and try to animate it from the bottom. You just use the stagger tool once and you get the transition you're looking for. It's pretty cool, but then you got to make sure you put it all in the notes so that the client can teach it. All right. We've got about 5 more minutes left, and I've got a couple other tools, some that I could probably spend all night teaching you about, especially the adjuster tool. But we're going to cover a lot more of that and use all these tools in the next 3 sessions as well. So it's okay if we don't get to all of them tonight. The morph tool is a really important tool to use. Now, I use the morph tool whenever I'm fine-tuning forms. So say we were in this curve here, and it doesn't necessarily look very, very nice. You can click on the morph tool, and it looks like this line to squiggly line with a little arrow. And I'm going to delete half of my handles, even more than that, select a smaller resolution. And you can see it does, you can smooth forms a lot better, kind of like what we did earlier with the pen tool. It helps you just kind of smooth things out. A lot of times you like to find, well, the furthest person out is going to be the 30, the furthest person down is going to be 4 in front of here, 4 behind there, out to the 35. You know, you think about those things in dressing the form and how they're going to clean the form when you're doing these things. So the morph tool can kind of help you, you know, morph and smooth and do it. There's a couple other people that I know of that use this tool as a form of creating their next form. So they will select all these performers, select them. They will select their morph tool. They like the interval that they're at, and then they'll go and they'll design drill that's more of like the spaghetti style drill. They'll lock the interval, and then they'll just take it with them. And they'll, well, let's go the other way. I didn't like that. And they'll just kind of do this, and they get everybody in place, and then they write their drill this way. So this is how they'll create their transition. Now this creates a straight path transition. So if you need to create a curved path because you get some collisions or whatever, you'd have to go do another tool that we're going to work with next called the adjuster tool to help make some curved forms. So you can use the morph tool to kind of create forms, to create transitions. If that's your thing. I know a buddy of mine uses the morph tool a lot. He also uses, I got a lot of people that use the adjuster tool. Okay, let me just try to do a little bit on the adjuster tool, and then we'll probably call it a night for tonight. And I'll make sure that push and traditional and some of these other ones that are up here, we can look at. Also, if you head to my YouTube channel, I've got a video for every tool in Pyware, so go check it out. All right, this last one, adjuster tool. It's way over here underneath the glue tool. And this in itself is a way to create a lot of transitions. It's just a little bit more time consuming. You can move literally anybody, anywhere. Oh, sorry, don't select anybody before you do it. You can move anybody, anywhere, and then you can hit edit their path, get rid of a bunch of handles. You can make them do a curved path. It's just a little funny with how it works because you've got to click on performers, click on their path. You can edit their path, hit edit path again to stop selecting them, and then go to the next person. And you can edit their path. So for those really detailed drill pages, you can do it all in one if you want. Or if you wanted the whole thing to move and flex, hit the adjuster tool, and then move the first guy, edit path. And whenever you move these handles, it'll move the whole group, and they all kind of do a curved path with it. So it's a good way to shape those transitions where people need to curve around things. A lot of times I'll do the winds with all the tools, but I'll do my color guard with my adjuster tool, because my adjuster tool will allow me to create those moments where if they got to go in and out of somebody or they got to take a curved path, I can easily do that all in one step without having to reselect every individual guard member. I hope that a lot of this kind of opened your eyes to the program a bit. It can be a beast of a program to use, but the most important thing, like anything in life, is to practice, right? If you have more questions, I'm always here. Reach out, head to my YouTube channel as well, and subscribe so you can see the new things I've got there. I think I've got 50 something plus videos now on Pyware. just little tips and tricks, and I've got a little video for every single tool and how it works, and a little bit more in depth than what you saw tonight. But I hope what you saw tonight helped you understand how the program flows, and some of the little things that you maybe didn't know on how to work it, like deleting transitions to go back, Control C and Control V, little shortcuts that can help you. And then of course how the tools are grouped, whether it's a creation tool where you create a new form, or it's a transition tool where you use a form that's already there and you either move in a curved path to the next one, like a follow the leader, or it's some sort of resize or push or rotation, that sort of thing. So hats off to all of you for signing up. In the next session, we are going to get into some score study, setting up our count track, creating a moment, and working backwards. And then in our third segment, you'll get a file that has everything already done, all the performers on the field, ready to go, and we produce a whole minute of show. And then we'll work in the fourth one on how to finish that and how to export it, and it will be awesome. So thank you again so much to Tim for hosting everything and being here, and always supporting me and the channel and my work. So it's an awesome pleasure to have the opportunity.